Hey everyone, and welcome to Voices of Hope. I'm Ross Wilsey.
And I'm Mike Wade.
Each episode, we sit down to talk about what it means to live well, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and beyond.
We'll look at how wellness shapes us as individuals, families, communities, and even the wider world around us.
Through real stories and honest conversations, we'll explore what hope looks like and how it grows, right here in the New River Valley.
Thanks for joining us. This is Voices of Hope.
Today's guest is Meredith Lane. At just 21 years of age, she's survived an overdose, is a person in recovery, and she's about to graduate from Virginia Tech. Stay tuned to hear about Meredith's many endeavors as an advocate and champion for both restorative justice as well as harm reduction. She also gives her views on the challenges many young people are facing today and how she personally maintains wellness in the midst of being incredibly busy. Be sure to stick around for the entire interview to hear the advice Meredith's 100-year-old grandmother shares on staying healthy, both mentally and physically.
Well, Meredith, welcome to the Voices of Hope podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you with us. We're going to jump right in. So, first of all, for the folks who don't know you, let's talk a little bit about your background, where you're from, your family, all those good things.
Yeah, I can do that. So I was born and raised in Arlington, Virginia, just out of DC. So we like to say I'm from Nova, Northern Virginia. And I ended up moving to the New River Valley to come to school at Virginia Tech. But that's where I grew up. And it's a very different environment from where I'm living now in the New River Valley. It's much more urban. It's a larger population, more diversity, very different feel to it, the way that you connect with people. And I think actually disconnection was a bit of an issue for me. And I didn't feel like I had a super strong community growing up in Arlington. I didn't feel like my family was very integrated. I also come from a blended family. So I have one sibling. She's my half sister, and we share a mom. And so we have different dads. And she's also 9 years my senior. So generally speaking, I felt as though I didn't have a lot of strong, embedded connection with people my own age my whole life. And most of my family members are a lot older than me too, interestingly. So kind of feeling like I was isolated in my generation was a theme within my family dynamic. And I think coming to the New River Valley, I was able to find way more community than I ever had growing up, interestingly.
That's interesting. Well, that is not something we hear very often. Usually it's just the culture shock of, oh my gosh, it's so slow and,
Nothing to do here.
Nothing to do. Yeah. So,
and I think something about that maybe made it easier for me to find that connection because it's less overwhelming. And in big cities, there's so many people, but everyone's doing their own separate things. Yeah. But here, you kind of have to look around in a way.
And you're not stuck in your car in traffic for half the day.
True.
So, Meredith, you mentioned you came down here to attend Virginia Tech. And are you still a student there?
I am, yeah. I'm in my last semester now, and I'm graduating in December, so just a couple months.
Well, congrats, almost.
Thank you.
And what are you studying?
So now I'm studying sociology and criminology. That wasn't the case when I first came to Tech, and I might be jumping ahead a little bit here, but when I did first come to Virginia Tech, I was actually an accounting major, which, yes, and if people know me, they usually are surprised to hear that, and I think at that time I made the decision to enroll here. I really didn't have plans. I wasn't really envisioning a strong future for myself. I was kind of apathetic to life in general, and I picked a major that seemed practical and as though it would be really easy to defend if people questioned why I wanted to study it, because it's like, oh, well, I'll just be an accountant and my degree will be worth it because it'll pay off and I can do that. But yes, I'd say apathy was a big word to describe how I was feeling my senior year of high school and kind of just a lot of my high school experience in general. And generally my mental health wasn't great at that time. And I was starting some kind of chaotic drug use that had initially picked up when I was 14, 15 years old with things drinking alcohol, smoking weed, and it kind of turned into more extreme drugs as time went on. And I started meeting people who were doing psychedelics and cocaine, and that just became a pretty regular part of my social scene. And I didn't have a lot of reasons to not want to participate in that drug use. And I think it, in a sense, that culture of use brought me some community and gave me more of an identity that I felt as though I had been missing. And for a while, that was fine, and there weren't a lot of consequences to it. But then I had a close friend at the time who, I didn't realize this, but he was severely addicted to opioids, and he regularly had pills that he would take. And I didn't realize this, they were just fentanyl pills, and I assumed, he said they were Oxy. I didn't have reason to think that they weren't. They looked like Oxy, and I started taking those with him. And at the time, I was regularly doing fentanyl, and I didn't even realize it.
Really?
Yeah. And my first semester at Tech, I was taking these pills, and I wound up overdosing. And that was a big moment for me. I think initially after that happened, 18-year-old me didn't fully understand the severity of that situation, and I kind of played it off. And in fact, a lot of my friends at the time were mad that someone called 911 and didn't think that was necessary and that I would have been fine, because people didn't realize I was doing fentanyl. They thought I must have just drank too much. And so, there's a big culture, at the time at least, I'm not sure what it would be like now, of, you don't narc, you don't get the police involved. And there was definitely some animosity. And when I was discharged from the hospital, I ended up internalizing that same narrative. So I was facing suspension and getting kicked out of school. None of that helped my mental health at the time. It did nothing but exacerbate it. But luckily, I ended up narrowly avoiding suspension, and I was able to make a case for myself. So all of that being said, I was studying accounting my first semester, and I was really disconnected, and I only had one in-person class. And I think because of that lack of connection, my motivation to succeed, and also that combined with my lack of interest in the course material itself, made me even more apathetic to everything around me. And my mental health was at an all-time low, and just a lot of shame and stigma, and that compounded with the isolation and lack of support I was feeling. It was not a good combination of things. And I'm not 100% sure where a precise turning point would be, because obviously I'm doing a lot better now. But at some point at the end of that semester, I did a lot of deep reflection, and I did a reassessment of what I care about and what I think is important. And something that came to mind was criminal justice reform, because my father was briefly incarcerated while I was growing up, and he ended up never working again after that because of employment barriers.
Sure.
And so that impacted our household quite tremendously. And my mother had to pick up a lot of slack, and it was just a tension that was really palpable. And so that was something that kind of came to mind as an issue that I care about, because I recognized that he made a mistake and he did something he shouldn't have done, but also there should be a way to move on past that. And you shouldn't be permanently placed in really a lower tier of society for the rest of your life. And so that was something that I was interested in. And I started exploring concepts of restorative justice and just trying to learn as much as I possibly could. And I was like, you know what? We have criminology and sociology here. I think I'm going to switch into that. And so the semester afterwards, I had switched into that major, and I got to go on a really cool service trip to Selma, Alabama, to learn about restorative justice practices and mediation and conflict resolution. That kind of sparked more interest for me. And I did end up, I don't necessarily want to use the word relapsing, but I did end up going back to drug use quite a few times. And it wasn't until the beginning of fall 2023 semester that I really stopped using those substances. And now I've been clean from them for a little over 2 years now.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And it's weird. I'm not 100% sure what caused that change for me. I think part of it was as I got more invested in learning and putting myself in environments with other passionate people, I started, and these were people who weren't doing drugs. So I kind of started to build relationships with different people who weren't participating in that drug use. And I think after enough time had passed, I realized, oh, I'm not doing drugs anymore. And that's fine. So I read all these other things.
So your recovery wasn't the result of any kind of like specific treatment or therapy or anything like that?
No, it really wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't. I wound, and it wasn't easy at first. I definitely had moments of wanting to keep using, but because I was more separated from that drug user community, it was harder for me to immediately go back to that lifestyle, because there was a disconnection there.
Right.
And then because I had been surrounded by other types of resources and relationships, I think I was just really lucky in the sense that I reintegrated into a different community. Because had those substances still been around me, I probably would have kept using them. I'm not sure where I would be now. Yeah. So I think it's a mixture of a lot of external factors that conveniently were kind of removed from my life for me. And also just being able to meet new people at the same time.
One thing that stood out to me in your story about the actual overdose was how it just seemed like nobody really knew what was going on. Maybe that is just because it was a party scene and you could have been drunk or whatever, but it just sounds like people aren't educated as to what overdose looks like and what drug use can lead to. And
yeah, I can talk about that. I have a few things to say. The night that I overdosed, you're correct in that nobody knew what was going on. Nobody had naloxone with them. And if they did, I'm not sure if they would have known how to use it. But there were very clear signs that I was overdosed and not drunk. I mean, obviously, I wasn't really present to tell the story, but everyone told me my skin was dark blue. Oh, wow. The days after. And I was really close to having been gone. It was a very close call. But a lack of education and awareness was a huge problem. And so much stigma. Everyone was really worried about getting in trouble.
Right.
Which unfortunately might still be an issue now. But I will say, through Students for Sensible Drug Policy, I do a lot of tabling on campus. And I get to interact with the student population at large. And almost everybody, when I ask, has a pretty firm understanding of what naloxone is. And so I think there has been changes. There have been noticeable changes in people's level of understanding and awareness, thanks to, I assume, a lot of this work that you guys at NRVCS do and that Virginia Tech does to kind of bolster awareness and education.
Right.
So I think that's promising. Hopefully, all of our social media efforts and online campaigns have been doing something.
Yeah.
So
definitely sounds promising.
There's another part to your question. It was
just what are some of the biggest challenges that are facing young people today?
That's a really big question. And I'm sure, of course, it's different for different people. But I think isolation, lack of connection, the role of the internet is becoming more and more pervasive. I get really concerned when I think about what it's like for generations below me, or just people even just a few years younger than me. I used to work at Woodrow Wilson Middle School in Roanoke, actually doing restorative justice work, but there's just a really stark contrast in the way kids interact with each other now than when I remember. And you can just tell that a lot of these social media platforms, primarily TikTok, have really molded their brains in the way that they behave. And so how do we even, that seems like a social problem to me.
I would agree with that.
And just generally, it's harder to connect with kids from the perspective of an educator or even as a parent, But for people specifically my age, there's all sorts of factors that could influence someone's likelihood to turn to substance use. As we know, trauma is a really big one. And I think there's a lot of kids who start using substances that don't necessarily have some big traumatic events happen to them. I think boredom and just generally not feeling very connected with their lives is a really, really big factor. And that lacking a community, lacking an identity. And I'd say that's probably just a byproduct of the culture that we live in, right? If there is trauma as well, that can definitely increase the likelihood of someone to continue the drug use once they try it for the first time. But I'd say looking at things to do moving forward, examining that element of community togetherness and belonging is really big. because if I'm looking at my own story, I think that really is what saved me from the path that I was going down, was those connections, having people invest in me and help me see that I did have a real future and that I shouldn't just be throwing my life away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talk about it all the time. Connection is such a huge part of what we do in prevention, and that we're always out there trying to encourage people to connect with each other in various ways and get involved in things. So,
I'm curious. Do you ever have a fear of return to use or relapse? Is that ever like?
Yeah, actually it is. My drug of choice was always cocaine, and that's a really tricky drug because it's not physically addictive, but it's very mentally addictive. And psychologically, it's definitely still up in my head, and all the time I'll have fears of, if this was presented to me, I'm not really sure what I would do.
Right.
And I don't know, I might use it, I might not, but I've distanced myself so greatly from spaces where that's normalized and accessible that I think ultimately it's fine. But yeah, that drug is a really tricky one. And it's also linked with, just generally having more energy and being more productive. And those are things that I strive to be all the time. And I like being able to get things done and to be a high performing individual. So I think that might just be something in my nature that I'll have to live with and manage.
I've had conversations with multiple individuals who struggled with addictions to meth, and that productivity thing, and that I've got to keep going. I got a family to take care of.
Right.
I've got a job I've got to keep going at. It's a very real thing that is a substance or those types of substances that are leaned upon simply for trying to exist and keep your head above water.
Right. I do still consume a ton of caffeine, and I have an on and off relationship with nicotine. As of right now, I haven't been using it, which is great. Yeah. But I started vaping when I was 14.
Did you really?
Yes, because that was just something that was pretty pervasive at the time. So I started using nicotine, and I got severely addicted to it.
Yeah.
For all of high school, a lot of college. So, but it sucks. It's so addictive, and it's so easy to carry it with you everywhere you go.
And even that has a narrative out there that, hey, this gives you clarity of focus, and
they taste really good. A lot of them are really delicious too.
Yeah, the trade-off,
which is awful and really should not be allowed. And there's so little regulation in a lot of the vapes. And there's a lot of cannabis products too that you can buy in Virginia, and things like kratom. There's just generally a lot of substances that are very poorly regulated, and I think we need to be doing a better job at that, because some of them are quite harmful too. A lot of these gas station drugs, you don't really know what's in it. And that's maybe a conversation for another day, but
we're getting all kinds of episode ideas.
Yeah, well, you're getting some highlights of just what's going on right now. It's so concerning. And I have two boys in middle and high school that, I'm sure it's all around them, and try to have conversations, but it's scary.
Yeah, I'm a really big harm reduction advocate for those reasons of even a kid who is really integrated in their community and has a good head on their shoulders and knows that they have a bright future ahead of them could make some bad decisions.
Right.
We're all human. And I think to an extent, drug use within a degree is going to be inevitable. I don't think we can completely get rid of demand, and we certainly can't eliminate supply forever. Right. We're always going to have drugs out there. And so knowing those two things, we have to be able to keep people safe. And so harm reduction education is something that I am such a big fan of. Making sure young people and everybody are, they're empowered with knowledge and they have the tools to be able to save a life.
Right.
It's necessary. And I would like to see our public schools take on a more robust role with some of that education. I know that there's some hesitation with a lot of the public schools around here to take that on for a wide variety of reasons. But I think it's necessary. I think having test strips for things like fentanyl and xylazine and the really harmful drugs that are present in drug supplies right now. yeah, and just even little kids, having these conversations with them. Because I've heard stories of kids in elementary school accidentally getting into fentanyl from home.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that we have to be telling 6 and 7 and 8-year-olds about naloxone and how to use it and what it is, but it's kind of just the reality of where we are right now.
So you said you started vaping when you were around 14. If you could go back now and talk to your 14-year-old self, what would you tell her?
I'd tell her that this is going to be something that she's going to have to deal with for many years to come.
Yeah.
And it's more harmful than she realizes probably. But at the same time, I'm not sure anything that I could say would really stop her from making those decisions, because it made her feel cool and it connected her with other people. Actually, it's kind of a funny story. One of my best friends at the time messaged me and she said, "Do you want to buy a Juul together?" And we had shared custody over one. And because of that, if you look at that specific situation though, not only were we vaping, but we were also bonding with each other.
Right.
We bought this thing together, we used it together, and I felt as though I was appeasing her and strengthening our relationship by saying yes.
Yeah.
And also, you kind of get some social capital from participating in these things. And you'll meet other students who also vape, and then you'll connect with them over that. And even though it's a bad thing to be connecting over, it's still what you're connecting over because it's there. So how can we really address this issue?
And that's the big question, right?
Yeah.
It's like, how do we effectively curb this behavior with the young people, knowing that it's going to set them up for probably a lifelong struggle with nicotine addiction. And you're right, though, there is community that comes with that, because just pulling up to our parking lot this morning, folks outside the building gathered in a group enjoying cigarettes. That's part of it. Right. It's not just the substance itself. So
I think maybe if I had felt more connected in other ways, and I already had a lot of really robust friendships, and perhaps that would have been something that would have prevented me. So maybe not having a specific individual tell me not to do it, but rather just having all of these protective factors in the first place that I didn't have.
Right.
Probably would have been the best way.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have needed that social capital so badly, because I would have had other sources providing it for me theoretically.
Great point.
I want to ask you about your involvement with, tell me if I get this wrong, but Students for Sensible Drug Policies?
You got
Did
it.
I get it? Okay.
Ding, ding, ding.
So tell me a little bit about what you do with that organization and how you got involved.
For sure. So Students for Sensible Drug Policy is a national organization, technically international. I think we have some chapters in other countries too, that was started well over 20 years ago by some students up in New York, I believe at Rochester, who wanted to mobilize and do something about the war on drugs and the effects of the war on drugs. So it's a club dedicated towards looking at the legislation regarding the war on drugs and trying to change it by getting together, talking about it, using our voices, empowering students to learn about participating in the political process and having these conversations. And we also do a lot of harm reduction work with that as well, just wanting to keep students safe. We do a lot of naloxone rapid revive trainings. We pass out fentanyl test strips, xylazine test strips, all sorts of harm reduction supplies. So in that sense, it's kind of a multifaceted club, and we kind of look at drug use holistically, looking at how policy often leads us to the contexts that we're in, and the importance of having trauma-informed policies that really acknowledge what substance use disorder is and the best way to address it. We're against punitive responses to drug use as a whole and don't believe in incarceration for drug use. We're very aware of the harms of the prison industrial complex, how it's impacted communities, torn apart families, caused a lot of generational trauma. And so those are kind of the core issues that we're looking at and the values of the club. But I actually discovered the club, it was right before fall semester of 2023. So right before my sophomore year, I started doing some investigatory research and I found out about the club. I had gotten involved with a national organization by that point called SAFE Project, which stands for Stop Addiction Fatality Epidemic. And they had a collegiate recovery leadership academy that I applied for. And I got in. And they provide funding for you to do a project throughout a year. And that's when I reached out to Students for Sensible Drug Policy at Gobblerfest that first semester. And they put me on their board that same day I went to that first meeting, and my involvement from there just grew that semester, and I ran for president and I became the vice president because a bunch of people ran that year. And that was a really great way for me to have that community and feel like I was being invested in, right? Because I had this title now and I had this list of responsibilities and I had people I was mentoring actually, and all of that really built me up, and made me feel more confident and capable and gave me that ability to look further into my own future. Yeah. And so we've done so many cool projects. I mean, I could talk about all the projects that we've done the past 2 years that I've been involved for hours, right? We've done so many cool things that I'm so proud of. We've lobbied in Richmond. Gosh, yeah, we've had all sorts of people come in. We had an event at the Lyric 2 weeks ago that was really successful in collaboration with the Virginia Tech Center for Peace Studies, looking at the effects of mass incarceration here in Central Appalachia specifically, all sorts of cool stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we work with politicians and all sorts of cool stuff.
That's great. Well, in addition to being a student and your work with SSDP, you also have an internship with the New River Valley Regional Commission. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that's kind of an interesting story as to how I started that work. As well as being involved with SSDP, I was also a part of VT Engage, which is the basically community engaged learning hub at Virginia Tech. And I was going on a bunch of service trips with them, and I ended up becoming a service trip leader. And we went down to Columbia, South Carolina to work in a public defender's office. And the public defender who was mentoring us, her name was Kylie Sutton, she went to Virginia Tech. And she heard me asking these questions, and she said, I think you should connect with a woman named Holly Lesko, because she does work directly pertaining to the questions you're asking. And Kylie was a student at Tech when Holly was working there, and that's how they met. So through that relationship with the public defender, I ended up getting connected with Holly. And so I looked her up and I just cold emailed her and I said, hey, my name is Meredith and this is my background and I'm really interested in learning more. Can I get involved? And she said yes, and became a really great mentor for me. And I ended up hosting a meeting at the VT Engage house, and then I invited the whole community health team. So Holly and Anna and Kinsey all came, and at the time Julie Fox as well. And we just talked and they listened to a lot of my ideas, and it was a really valuable experience to have all of these adults and career professionals interested in what I had to say.
Yeah.
And I felt just really heard and empowered. And after some time, I pushed a little bit, and Holly was like, yeah, we can give you an internship. And so I'm still interning there now, and I've done a lot of really wonderful things under their guidance.
Yeah, so what's been the focus of your work there?
Yeah, so as of lately, I've been running the Justice Involved technical team. Mm-hmm. So for some context, what we do in the community health team office is we manage OAA funding, and we communicate with service providers in the New River Valley, and we make connections and just have an understanding, sort of acting as like liaisons between this OAA funding from Virginia and just connecting with people in the community, assessing what needs to be worked on and helping people with applications for getting that money. And so we have a bunch of different technical teams. We have a transportation technical team who does a lot of work with NRVCS, an outreach technical team, a housing technical team, and a justice involved one. And we bring people together in the community who are specifically working in those fields to talk about how we can be doing things better, how we can be utilizing this opioid abatement funding properly. And so I was in charge of the justice involved one, and we actually had a meeting this morning. So having people who work in the jail, people from New River Community Action, people from NRVCS, people from the community college actually goes into the jails pretty frequently, people from workforce development, people from Southwest Virginia Legal Aid, just coming together and having these dialogues about what we can be doing better. And so largely I've been looking at that criminal justice intersection with substance use disorder. But I've done all sorts of things. I've helped with some social media campaigns and content development. I've made some connections between people at Virginia Tech and people at the Regional Commission. We've done a lot of work with neuroscience students, trying to get some curriculum that emphasizes the evidence-based neuroscience perspective regarding substance use disorder to educate children in schools. Kind of coming up with a better program than DARE. And working with psychology professors and just trying to make this a more transdisciplinary effort when looking at how we can better prevention efforts and responses to substance use disorder.
So with all this going on, do you have time to think about the future? Do you have any clear idea of what you may want to do down the road with some of these efforts?
And that's something that I've been thinking about a lot in the past few weeks because I am graduating so soon. I'm actually going to Australia when I graduate. I have a plane ticket. I'm landing in Melbourne on January 1st. Wow. And I have a visa for a year. I'm not sure how long I'll be there, but I'm just kind of packing up and going. There's a possibility I might come back to do grad school at Tech as well, though. I've been talking with some faculty in the sociology department about that, and I think that would be really cool. I can already think of a lot of research projects I could do for community-based research for Virginia Tech. I also kind of just want to travel all over the U.S. and do some AmeriCorps VISTA programs. I've considered going to law school. I'm not sure if that's really something I want to do. I think it would be a useful tool for sure. Mm-hmm. But really, I'm just trying to keep my options as open as possible right now and kind of just exist.
Yeah.
Well, you're on the Voices of Hope podcast. We've got to kind of talk about it. What does the word hope mean to you?
I think for me, hope is the ability to see a future for yourself and to really clearly be able to see yourself living it. And if you don't have that personal investment and that confidence in yourself that you know you're capable of doing something and you can envision yourself going somewhere, not having that, I think means you don't have hope. And so, yeah, I think that desire to keep going and to know that there's something better waiting for you tomorrow.
I like it. Thank you.
We talk a lot about what we do to maintain wellness in our personal lives, in the community or wherever. So what are some things that you do to maintain wellness in your life?
That is something that I am still working on, and I think I'm getting a little bit better at. Mm-hmm. I think in a sense, I've kind of replaced one addiction for another in the amount that I work and my desire to constantly be doing things. And so because of that, I think taking care of myself and prioritizing wellness hasn't been a big thing for me. And so I don't always eat super healthy, and I haven't been someone who prioritizes exercising. And honestly, I've just never been an athletic person. That's always kind of just been an issue. But actually, as of recently, in the past few months, I have been going to the gym more often. And I don't know what actually inspired me to commit to doing that, but I'm glad that I'm doing it. Mostly, I just want to be strong and capable of doing things, right? Like my body is this vessel that allows me to get things done. And if I don't take care of it, then I know for a fact I won't be able to do work either.
Yeah.
And actually my grandmother just turned 100 years old.
Oh, wow.
And I went to her birthday party in Nashville, and she is still kicking it.
That's amazing.
You know, she's all there mentally, very lucid, and she always tells me the importance of exercising and of having community and relationships as being the main things that you need to do for your mental health and your physical health. And so
we need to interview her.
Yeah. Oh my God, you totally should. She's a really incredible woman. She was also a psychiatrist. She became a doctor in the 1950s, which was not easy for a woman to do at the time. But I'm also practicing mindfulness. I think I'm on the board of directors for Instill Mindfulness. And that's another thing where sometimes I feel a little hypocritical of not actually committing to doing my practice every single day, but even just a few minutes of mindfulness breathing, it goes a really long way. It does. And that will really increase my happiness and enhance my mood if I'm able to just remember all of the things that I have.
Yeah.
And it sounds kind of cliche, but one of my favorite movies is It's a Wonderful Life. And it really does a lot to imagine yourself without any of the things that you have. You know, just the horror of not having your family or your friends or your community. And then when you remember that you do actually have all those things, I just feel this rush of gratitude. And it really does make me feel happy. And I know it sounds kind of cliche.
Yeah, that's cool.
But in my mind, that's kind of what mindfulness is. Just taking a second to look around you, acknowledge the context that you're in, and all of the different factors that had to make that possible, and just appreciating it.
We've all got a little George Bailey in.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love your grandmother's advice, and I think when she talks about longevity, it's probably something worth listening to, right?
Her of all people. Yeah. And she can talk the talk and walk the walk.
So we've heard your grandmother's words of wisdom. How about you? Do you have any words of wisdom to share with our listeners as we wrap things up?
Yeah, I can try and emphasize and bring home some of the points that I've been trying to make. And I'm still only 21, so I'm sure I still have a lot to learn. But one big piece of advice I have is to just be as curious as possible and keep learning, because that, I think, is largely why I am where I am now, is that desire to keep learning and to expand my knowledge and to just push myself to develop a better understanding of the world around me and my community. And I think if you don't know what you want to do and you are feeling kind of apathetic, that's what you should do. You should learn more to figure out what it is that you are passionate about, what you do care about, because I guarantee you there's something. And I know it's tough and you might not always feel motivated to keep at that, but that's done wonders for just developing my identity. And also just not being afraid to reach out to people as a young person. I mean, the worst that can happen is someone doesn't respond or they say no, which isn't really that scary of a possibility in the long run. So don't be afraid to just reach out to as many people as possible and find that community, find that connection, and learn more.
Solid advice. So thank you for that.
Well, Meredith, we thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us and share a lot of your personal story, some of the things you're involved with, and we're excited to get the word out about everything you're doing. And, I know a lot of our listeners will learn from what you've shared. So thank you.
Thanks, Ross.
And congratulations on your pending graduation and your exciting adventure in Australia.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks for listening to Voices of Hope.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, we'd love for you to rate and review the podcast and help us spread the word.
Voices of Hope is a production of New River Valley Community Services.
To learn more or listen to past episodes, visit nrvcs.org/podcast.
And remember, hope grows when we share it.
So keep the conversation going, and we'll talk to you next time on Voices of Hope.